The system is broken. The system I refer to is whatever you want to call the political system in the United States. I'm not going to get into the trouble involved in defining it. You all know what I'm talking about. The way the system should work is that the people elect candidates to represent them. Those candidates act however they end up acting, and the people judge them based on those actions. If the elected official, for example, doesn't meet the expectations of the people then have two realistic options. They can vote for a different candidate next time, or they can protest in enough numbers to convince the official to act differently. These two reactions, if working properly, serve to keep the elected officials accountable to the people, forcing them to be at least somewhat populist in nature. Unfortunately, this system is no longer working properly. The people no longer choose the candidates, and the elected officials are no longer accountable to the people. When was the last election you remember that didn't boil down to two choices, both of whom were essentially selected by corporate interests in the form of donations before a single vote had even been cast? Well, the last presidential election was an example of that, but we'll get into that in a bit. Normally, it's whoever has the most money who chooses the candidates, because such people are the only ones who can afford to finance a major political race. But now, the candidates, even after they're elected, are more accountable to corporate interests and other big donors than they are to the people who voted for them. This is because the people have become content to get all their political information from those same corporate interests that have the most influence over elected officials. And this has led to another problem. Now, going back to the example of the last election, Donald Trump represents a break in this cycle. As long as the people with the most money were choosing all the candidates, things remained relatively stable. The corporations that supplied all the information made sure not to get people too angry at any one candidate, because they knew that such anger might lead to a desire for real significant change to the system that keeps them in power. But the powers that be didn't want Trump to gain power, and as he gained more and more momentum despite their best efforts, they were forced to resort to desperate measures. They began to lie and stretch the truth more and more until we arrived where we are now. See, now the American people are split between which version of the truth they believe. Do they believe the truths being told about how horrible and fascist and evil Donald Trump is? Or do they believe the truths Donald Trump presents to the people? And the problem is, these two truths are incompatible with each other. And when huge numbers of people have incompatible ideas of what the truth is, conflict is inevitable. And this brings us back to the way the system is supposed to work. For the people who oppose Trump, until they get a chance to vote him out of office, their only option is to protest in the hopes that he will change his actions. Unfortunately, the corporate media's lies and exaggerations about Trump have made peaceful and productive protests virtually impossible. How can you have a peaceful protest when significant numbers of the participants literally believe their country is being taken over by Nazis? If you genuinely believe that, would you be content to just protest peacefully? And what motivation does Trump have to change his actions, even if the protests were peaceful? From his perspective, these protesters and rioters are reacting to lies about him, not his actual actions. Since he's not doing the things they think he's doing, there's nothing he needs to change. And the part that really worries me about this is that as long as Trump is president, I don't think things are likely to get better on this front. He's not likely going to suddenly become acceptable to the people who have the most power in the country. The media is unlikely to start shifting its narrative away from the idea that Trump is evil. So protests will keep happening, and they'll keep turning into riots, and Trump supporters will continue to get more and more fanatical in their support as a reaction to all of this. I had hoped that the election of Trump would cause a grassroots movement to emerge on the left that would call for reason and calm and a reevaluation of values. So far, that hasn't happened. But it's the only real solution I see to the current problem. In my opinion, the only way to start solving some of the problems with the system is for some charismatic leader on the left to emerge and take control of the left away from the corporate interests and identity politicians currently in charge. Someone who can lead in opposition to Trump based on reason and fact rather than anger and hyperbole. Someone who can rein in the hatred and lead the people in actual peaceful protests. Such a person would likely face stiff opposition in much the same way Trump did, but Trump has already blazed a path that proves it's possible to get the support of the people in spite of endless character assassination by the mainstream media. Basically, what's needed is the anti-Trump. Someone who has the same popular appeal as Trump, but believes in more liberal ideals and has more personal integrity than Trump. I don't know if such a person even exists, but if they don't, then I'm not hopeful for the good old US of A. I'll do my best to think of other potential ways the country isn't doomed, but I'm not making any promises. So until next time, I'm Positive Improvement, and I wish you all the best.